Hello, I'm Haydn. I'm a filmmaker and I often see photos of cosplayers with amazing costumes. And it seems such a shame to not take photos that look like you've actually been in a movie. So as a filmmaker and a photographer, I want to talk about some lighting and tips and tricks and techniques that most photographers don't seem to use to make it look like you were in a movie. So the photo doesn't look like a snapshot, but it looks like a screen grab from an actual movie. So as a filmmaker, here's my top 8 tips on how to take photos that make it look like you were in a movie. Step 1, take the photo in landscape mode, not portrait. Because let's face it, how many movies have you been to where it's like that? It isn't, it's like this. Step 2, for the purposes of this one, we're going to just remove one person so it's just down to one person in the shot, and you'll see why in a moment. Step 3, often in a movie, a lot of the shots are two people talking to each other, and you will see what's called an over-the-shoulder shot, and that's where the camera is over one person's shoulder looking at the other person. So in one part of the screen, typically on about a third of the screen on one side or the other, you've kind of got the back of somebody's head. Not always, but often. And you kind of get the idea that you're kind of in this conversation but not really in it, and you're kind of an observer from just outside the conversation. So move somebody else in just in about a third of the frame so that you've got that little bit of blockage of the back of somebody's head so it looks like you're talking to somebody. Number 4, don't look at the camera. It's very, very rare in a movie or a TV show that the actor will look directly at the camera. Occasionally they do, but almost never. So don't look at the camera. Look slightly to one side, only slightly to one side, or away from. Number 5, and this is where it gets really clever. This, in cinematic terms, is called short lighting. And this is one of the key things that makes movies and TV shows look so cinematic. Now the way it's done is with 3 lights. One really bright light, one average light, and one much darker light. The first thing is called a hair light, and that hair light is shone on the back of a person's head, and it makes their hair look like you've just got a little bit of a ring of light around it, and it creates a distinction from the background and the foreground. It helps make the person stand out. Very subtle, but it's very effective. The second light, and this is called a key light. Now, this is really important. As you imagine the person is looking away from the camera. So let's imagine that this is me looking away from the camera, okay? You'll find that that there will be one side of the face that is more predominant than the other. The nose is kind of pointing in this direction. Now here's the thing. If you were to draw a line, imagine that the person's nose, they're facing this way, camera is on this side, the key light is on this side. So you're always filming towards the shadow side of a person's face. I tell you, once you see this, once you do this, you'll see it used all the time in film and television. So you're filming towards the shadow side, and the light, the key light, the brightest light, is shining just on this side. And it could be bright and harsh and direct, or it could be softened up. Softened up looks really good. You can soften it by bouncing a light off a big white sheet or something, and it just makes it really soft and smooth. The third light is called a fill light, and you don't always need one of these. Sometimes you can just bounce the light, but it's basically, so the shadow side that you're filming into, if it's complete shadow, you might not want that. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But just to lift it a little bit so you can see something. Often there's another light here that isn't as bright as this light over here, not as bright as the key light, but it's just light enough to just put some light on here. Sometimes you can just point another light at something that reflects it, and that's how you get it. But you've got the brightest light here, so camera's there, shadow side, brightest light here, hair light behind to give you a little ring, and then just a little bit of light here, and that's your lighting. Number 6, this is really important as well. Often the background is just a little bit darker than the foreground. It helps the foreground to stand out. It helps to draw your eyes to where the filmmaker wants your eyes to be, which is on the actor. And one tip for doing that, one technique, is to make the background just a little bit darker. So as a photographer, if you know about stops of light, then it's typically about 1, maybe 2 stops darker, the background, than the foreground of the key light. Number 7, do something. In a great movie or TV show, the characters that you're looking at are always doing something. There's something going on. There's an emotion going on. They're being driven to go from one place to another, to take their conversation from not knowing something to knowing something, to... There's always a change that takes place in a scene. some kind of change, either a physical change of location or a change of mood or a change of atmosphere or a change of dynamics as the person learns something new, but there's always a change and the people are always doing something. They're never just sitting around. Handy helpful hint from my pro helper over here is that if you have somebody who's in character as a cosplayer, then ask them what that character would do. What would they typically be doing in that costume? Number 8, shutter speed. This is really, really important. Shutter speeds when you're filming are typically around about 30th to a 60th of a second. Quite slow. That means that you pick up some movement blur. And that's important because when you're looking on screen at people moving, if there's no movement blur, I mean, it's only 24 frames every second that you're watching. And in order to create the illusion that you're watching a moving image, then motion blur is important. 9. I said there was 8, but really there's 9. There's probably more, to be honest, but this is the final one. In post-production, add something called the letterbox, which is where you go and it gives it that kind of cinematic crop. And it just makes it look even more cinematic. Give this a go, show me the results. Love to see if somebody's actually been brave enough to try this, because it's dead simple to do, but the results are so effective, they look brilliant. Thanks very much. I'm done.